Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Phil Elverum Discography Breakdown Series. I am Jake, and with me, as always, today is...
Hello, this is Alex.
Professor Schmorange in the flesh.
Professor Schmorange. I studied at Yale Law School in 2006.
That's right, and if you don't like the music of Mount Eerie, we will sue you. We have the power.
Okay. So we're gonna we're gonna be doing a little bit of an interlude episode.
Yeah, it's a hybrid interlude episode. And also we'll be talking about, just to spoil it now, we will also be talking about Singers and then Mount Eerie parts 6 and 7.
Yeah. Just no mainline album.
Yeah. And so we did take a week off because Alex was sick and
I was ill.
And we are both some busy folks with lots of things to do, but
yes.
That's all right. We're back here today, and so how do you want to get started?
So I wanna talk about the moon. I got the rare, infamous 7-inch release of the moon by the Microphones. It was an irresponsible decision to purchase this item, but I did, and here we are.
For the brand.
Yes, for the brand. And it's got the beautiful cover and stuff, but it also has an insert with a rather large narrative story, and I intend to read it to you today.
Yes.
It is titled The Moon. Interesting.
Interesting.
Or constant reminder of your size, worth, place, girth, span, point, avoidance, fearsome view, lack.
Wow, very right off the bat, just some Microphones vibes.
Yeah. It starts out with the infamous line, "I drove up to the city at night." Okay, I'm gonna read it. We're gonna. It's story time, since most people won't have access to this little pamphlet.
Yeah.
I'm sure people are interested. There's that one really in-depth blog about Microphones and Mount Eerie stuff. I think it's called The Seance. They made a post about this release, but they did not include a transcript of the story or even detailed enough photos. So here is your
exclusive
resource.
Content.
Okay. Ahem.
Hey folks, upon our reading of the how would you describe it?
The moon garble.
The moon garble, which is good and insightful and worth listening to. However, it is very long, and we felt it would be more appropriate to put it at the end of the podcast rather than at the beginning. So if we have piqued your interest with the previous discussion as to the content of this reading, then stay tuned for the end of the podcast where you can hear the garble in full. Singers. I also mentioned this to you earlier. I think it's kind of funny that the two albums we happen to be talking about today lie on sort of the exact opposite ends of the Mount Eerie spectrum. You have Singers, which is sort of like this nice little folky, kind of Americana, I guess, to use the kind of nomenclature we were using last time, versus Mount Eerie parts 6 and 7, which is like this very loud, drony, kind of like enigmatic release. But Singers, so Singers came out in, I believe, 2005, which is sort of the first like truly active year of Mount Eerie, I guess. And so a couple fun things, like right off the bat, this album is actually released under the name Singers, technically.
Yeah.
So it's obviously still a Mount Eerie album, but I think the additional, I guess just to put it out there, the whole like I guess you could call it a shtick of this album, is that every song has like a giant choir of other vocalists on it, like singing the songs with Phil. So it's kind of a way, I think, for him to sort of conceptualize this album differently. Like it's like a different group almost. Like it's this band singers and they're performing Mount Eerie songs, but it's sort of also its own thing.
So to give some context to this, in the Dawn Winter Journal, there was a day in which he was like, man, I just want to record an album with like fucking 30 dudes singing with me. And that is this. He went and did it. I can't say I like it, but he did it, and good for him.
Okay. Yeah. So I was coming into this expecting, like, I guess I'll play the Singers Defense Squad angle, because I mean, apart from No Flashlight, which we did a couple weeks ago, we've dedicated sort of a good deal of podcast time to talking about these little side projects Phil does, where he's either like tossing early demos together, or maybe gathering some B-sides or something, and those projects tend to have at least a few songs on there that make them worthwhile to listen to, but a lot of the times the projects themselves feel a little like haphazard, or like they're not really trying to be albums, but they just are what they are, like demos, B-sides, or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the point of this whole spiel is that this album, Singers, feels a lot more like album-y to me than I guess I was expecting coming into this. And there definitely are still moments where it's like, okay, like you can take it or leave it. But I feel like I was sort of surprised at how good some of these songs sound in like a more fleshed out way, especially considering some of them are songs that I think we've like heard before.
Yeah, it is absolutely an album. Like, I don't know. I think this is a weird release for me personally, because it feels like so much less effort was put into it in some ways.
Yeah, you can definitely hear that.
But also, I don't know. I like, as much as, and also I feel like in a lot of ways this album feels kind of almost like very adolescent for him, like in terms of like the writing, like lyrics, and also just, you know, his approach to it. But it feels like an important transitional experiment, and I'm still like glad that he actually released it, even though I feel like I wouldn't have, and most other artists wouldn't have. Like, Phil is really unprecious about his discography, and I think that's a good thing, because artist mythology is really bad. And like, fucking imagine if we only had The Glow Part 2, Mount Eerie, Wind's Poem, Sauna, and A Crow Looked at Me. Like, the hype around Phil and the mythos around him would be absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more grounding to hear this type of thing. I mean, you know, there's some songs on here that were just like, they're blatantly just were recorded in one take live, like in a room. You can hear the echo on his voice, like this, they just did it in one try, and like that's the one that made it on the album. And yeah, I mean, as far as the choir of singers is concerned, like it is a sort of unifying presence on this album, for better or for worse. Because it's not like a real choir.
No, they don't sound good, but it does make it more cohesive.
It kind of sounds like we're talking about with those Americana tracks on Song Islands, where it just sounds like Phil and like his buddies, and they're like at a campfire or something, just like, hey, let's play some sing-along songs.
Oh, It's Morning Time Again is probably my favorite track on here because of that aspect. Like, I don't know, it feels really frivolous, but that actually makes me like it more than most of the other tracks here, because it's just, you know, they're just kind of having fun, and it's like sort of this heavy concept, but they're being goofy about it.
Yeah, right. It sort of falls into a similar conceptual area as I Can't Believe You Actually Died, where it's like a sort of happy-go-lucky, tongue-in-cheek song about death, which, you know, in retrospect can be a little, you know.
Yeah.
uncomfortable, but the song in and of itself is like, I agree, a very good song. I
Yeah.
will say that like just a really pedantic pet peeve is like he spells Utto with a T, like
Yeah.
Uttoh, Utto.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've just like never seen it like spelled that way
I
before.
think
I thought
that's a reference to like I don't know, that's like a thing. That's not
okay.
it is slightly different from uh-oh. It is separately ut-oh.
It
um
has a different lexical meaning. Like they're two separate.
yeah, I do not know enough about this, but I can tell you that I don't know. This comes up with the song "Ya Hey" by Vampire Weekend, in which he sings "Ut Dio," which means "What God," um,
Oh,
in like Latin, I think.
yeah, that sounds right.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it is also like just an older version. I don't know.
Of that,
Again,
of like, yeah.
I don't know enough about this to really speak to it, but it it's not just him, I guess.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean, I'm gonna get a real like linguistics nerd on this, and I might delete it later if I don't like it. But fun fact, the phoneme that we're saying in the word uh-oh is actually a glottal stop, which does not have an orthographic representation in the English alphabet. So there's not actually a right or wrong way to spell that because the letter H doesn't make the sound, and neither does the letter T. So it's like doesn't really matter, and there's not a right or wrong answer.
Huh.
But
That's interesting.
but I don't know. I just like interesting nonetheless.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing this.
Yeah.
I wish more of the songs on this record went for this kind of approach. Like some of the other ones get more serious, like Let's Get Out of the Romance, which
Yeah.
I'm not into. But also then there's like Where Is My Tarp, which is pretty very melancholy and like that's actually a highlight for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I
I
do.
like the you know. Well, I guess I feel like the kind of waxing and waning of the choir works really well with the slow meditative nature of the track, and it hits a spot for me.
I was gonna ask you actually if you prefer Where Is My Tarp or Where Lies My Tarp? Which
um,
version do you think
Where
you
Lies My
prefer?
Tarp? But are they
Yeah.
even the same song?
They are structurally similar, but they're different. For sure they're different.
Yeah,
Um, I think you mentioned on one of our episodes, I think it actually was the episode where we were talking about the original Where Lies My Tarp, where it was you said it didn't make it on the album because it sort of shared too much real estate with I Want Wind to Blow, and that it sounds
yeah,
sort of like an opener, which I honestly still sort of agree with,
yeah.
even in this version. And I was sort of surprised that like he didn't like I was listening to this, and it's the third or fourth song on here, and I was like, man, this would have also been kind of a cool opener, but
Yeah. Well, I think the most important song to fill in this set of songs is Let's Get Out of the Romance. Like he's
yeah,
referenced it time and time again through his discography and I
yeah.
remember there was a lot of Let's Get Out of the Romance in the Dawn Winter Journal. Um
Okay. Because yeah, I think that refrain, like "Let's get out of the romance," is the refrain on one of the songs on Lost Wisdom. I can't remember exactly which one.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah, that does. As a matter of fact, "Let's Get Out of the Romance" sort of feels like a Frankenstein of a lot of different Phil songs that have ended up getting released. Like it has a similar chord progression to "I Want to Be Cold." It like has
Yeah.
some like lyrics pulled from like Great Ghosts, I think, and then also the refrain from that song on Lost Wisdom. So like even though it never really made it onto like an album in its own right, it's like sort of it got dissected and made it into the discography kind of separately.
Yeah, and that gets to kind of another complaint I have about this album, I guess, or another I don't know. One thing that makes me not really care for this album as much as I could is I feel like so many of these ideas he would go on to do better later.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely. Yeah, this does feel sort of. I mean, we originally were going to talk about this on the Dawn, Lost Wisdom, et cetera, episode.
Yes.
Which makes sense because, yeah, a lot of these songs do sort of get, I guess, improved on those albums to some extent.
They kind of get dissected and placed elsewhere. I feel. Takes organs from one song and puts them in another.
Yeah, exactly. Just to mention a couple other things, I did really like the song Human. That was one of the standouts for me on here.
There's a small Like a Rolling Stone reference on
Oh, really?
On that track. Yeah.
I was thinking, I wrote down that it sounds like Let It Be by the Beatles to me. Like the chord progression is like very similar to that song. I was like, why is it so familiar? And eventually it kind of like landed on that.
Yeah.
And then
Mount Eerie lyrics.
Yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was the "So Your Big Black Cloud Will Come" part. Do you think is that the actual one that was on Mount Eerie? Like that choir singing it?
I don't think so.
I couldn't really tell.
It doesn't make sense for it to have been the same one because, I mean, unless he recycled it here and it wasn't actually part of the singer's choir.
Well, I was looking up some of the like credits, and it seems that some of these songs were actually recorded before he went to Norway, and some were recorded after he went to Norway. It wasn't like all from one like recording session. So I just thought maybe it could be the same one, but also it doesn't sound the same to me. I don't know, that might just because it's like divorced from the like production of Mount Eerie, but yeah. I don't know.
Mount Eerie is such a singular moment.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Like, I'm sure there are a lot of other elements you could take out of context and just have them seem foreign.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't actually have a whole lot more to say, I don't think.
Me neither.
It's a pit stop. I'm glad it exists, but I don't love it. And I certainly do not consider this an essential Mount Eerie release.
I would pretty much be on the same page with you on that. I think there's definitely some interesting moments. It's worth checking out for a couple of the songs, but as an album, it's mostly just fine, I guess. It's not like, actively bad, but it's just like whatever. Yeah. I listened to this yesterday and I can't remember what it sounds like off the top of my head, but apparently, according to what I wrote down, I Cut My Hands Off reminds me of Amazing Sounds of Orgy by Radiohead.
Let's do a Radiohead B-side series.
Oh my god, yeah.
That's one of my favorite Radiohead songs.
It's good.
I definitely didn't pick up on that listening to it, but that was one of my favorite songs from this record.
Okay, yeah. You truly could do a Radiohead B-side series because there's just so many good ones, like,
and also they're so interesting, like they're so different from Radiohead's usual style, I feel, and they go like some really weird places.
I mean,
a lot of the B-sides.
No one talks about it, but Radiohead basically invented indie folk with gagging order.
Sure.
Yeah, don't dig into that any deeper.
Nick Drake
canceled.
Radiohead, in fact.
Yeah, Nick Drake was clearly copying Gagging Order. And he wrote Pink Moon in the 70s.
The Hail to the Thief B-side, sorry, we're totally on a tangent, but the Hail to the Thief B-sides especially are just really bizarre.
The whole Calm Leg EP is like, it's sort of a mess, but there's like all sorts of weird, interesting things on that project.
Sometime in the future, we'll probably explore this more.
Keep them peeled, folks.
If we ever fucking finish this series.
Yeah, true.
Which we will. I know we will. We're doing good. We've only
maybe not in a nice succinct 14 weeks.
No, like we had originally
how it is sort of scheduled out, but it will be finished regardless.
Well, I think we'll finish before the summer.
For
and
sure.
then
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
Maddie and Jackson can have their Death Grip series, which
Yes, yes.
inherently will last a lot less time.
Oh, I mean, yeah, just naturally.
Yeah.
So do you want to dive into Mount Erie parts 6 and 7?
Sure.
Ex
I love Mount Eerie Parts 6 and 7. I haven't listened to it a million times, but I still consider it one of my favorite Phil releases. Um,
yeah.
I think like I don't know. Well, just as a little primer to this record, I guess here he kind of like obviously it's a sequel to Mount Eerie, and then
Hmm.
also it's like, well, at least I see it more as a sequel than a continuation personally. But
Yeah.
he kind of dabbles with the black metal concepts that would shape Wynn's poem, but honestly, I see this record, whatever it is, EP, I don't know, as more of a precursor to Sauna than anything.
Yeah, I can see that. I sort of like to categorize like Wind's Poem, Clear Moon, Ocean Roar, and Sana. I think those four albums are, I mean, they do sound different, but they sort of explore the same general sonic areas as one
Yeah,
another. And I think this project can also sort of fit squarely in that categorization
yeah,
as well. Like very drony, as and it does dabble in some of those like louder metal noises.
right.
And with that being said, it is sort of hard for me personally to draw a super concrete connection between this and Mount Eerie, the album.
Yeah.
Like, apart from it being called Mount Eerie Parts 6 and 7, and from like a couple lyrical connections, they are sort of like very different.
Well, I don't know. I think in a way, like at this point in his discography, this album it's not an album really. It's kind of an EP.
It's more of an EP, but still, yeah.
It's yeah, I don't know. It's hard to categorize this.
Yeah.
It is closest to Mount Eerie, I feel, than to anything else he had released at this point. And I think it was kind of like a continuation of the weird like spiritual detachment of that album. Um,
Yeah.
but also like and again the like there's this deep alienation that from his environment that like runs through at least known world and unknown world that really reminds me of some of my favorite moments from Sauna. um
Yeah.
and but was kind of at that point just an echo of Mount Eerie.
Right. There's a lot of yeah, I would say that the connections that I see between the two do lie more in these sort of like thematic aspects of the album.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, all I guess would you say there's 4 songs on here, either 2 or 4, I guess, depending on how you want to split them up.
Yeah.
Um,
I go for personally, but that's
yeah,
just my own bias because on Apple Music it's just 4 songs. They aren't even called Mount Eerie Parts 6 and 7. I mean
yeah,
the the record is called that, but like I don't know. I've seen it written as like Known World and Unknown World Mount Eerie Part 6, like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But there's no mention of that in the track list on Apple Music. So that's my inclination. But also, I would like never want to listen to Known World and Unknown World separately.
yeah.
Especially
They, yeah.
because, sorry, you go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing.
Okay, especially because the propulsive moment when like Unknown World kind of explodes out of Known World with those drums and stuff. That is one of my
Yeah,
favorite moments in his discography. Um, and it's genuinely so like I don't have a word for it. It's just it's such a like rousing moment, I
Yeah.
guess.
I will agree that these songs, specifically Known World and Unknown World, are sort of hard to explain.
Yeah.
In a similar way to how Mount Eerie itself is hard to explain.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
uh,
There's a kind of obtuseness here that
mhm.
this has in common with that album.
I actually did also pick up on uh, some sort of sauna things, specifically on Known World. He has this line about like making coffee in the dissipating fog or something like that. I don't know the exact
Yeah.
line, but it's like this sort of juxtaposition of this sort of esoteric kind of universe poetry mixed with lines about just normal shit like making coffee and kind of, drawing the connection there, like the mundanity of life is also profound, which is
Yeah.
definitely a sentiment that would get explored uh, on Sana
Yeah.
in a much like kind of larger context, I feel like.
Yeah. And in that way this album is definitely more grounded than the Mount Eerie album.
Yeah.
In like a sort of reality. Phil feels much more like a human person here.
Yeah.
And it's easier to relate to him, but and I don't know, at the same time he's really detached on Unknown World. Very like kind of I don't know. The mental health on this album not doing so great.
Yeah, this is definitely a dark project, you could say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, could we talk about Blue Light on the Floor?
Sure.
Because I think that's probably my pick here. My pick, and I don't know if it's
Okay.
like necessarily my favorite, but it's definitely the song that is like the most striking to me because, for one, the song is like metal as hell, like Nordic
Yeah.
eyeliner dudes and like devil horns and leather and blood type of metal, not like I don't know. But basically it's the song is like just Phil getting yelled at by the moon, which is I just think very
Wow.
on brand.
Yeah.
And this song actually I haven't heard this version in a long time, but there's a song called Blue Light on the Floor that's on Black Wooden Ceiling opening. I don't know if they're the exact same. Um, but it sort of makes sense considering that's his like punk album and this is like the punk song here.
Yeah. Yeah. It slaps?
It does. That's fair. That's fair to say. That's a safe adjective
Yeah.
to describe this song with.
This is a weird album to say that it slaps. Again, not an album, but it do slap. Like Unknown World absolutely bangs.
For sure. Yeah. And again, the last verse is according to Genius. I would have to look at the physical copy to know if it's like that on there, but it's apparently sung by the moon. It's like verse 5 and then the moon in quotes, and it's basically the moon being like, hey, you little piece of shit. You don't know anything.
Hey, you little piss baby. You think you're so fucking cool, huh? You think you're so fucking tough?
Oh my god. Oh man. Phil Elverum Gex collab when?
When?
The same moon that's singing on this song is also the character that's singing Money Machine.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to do a Gex retrospect because we overlooked them on the pod.
We talked
We
about
had
them briefly on the Album of the Year cast, but
yeah.
too briefly.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I'm a strong Gex defender, so
Yeah.
I don't
Gex
yeah.
for life.
I'm like 80% sure that will be a song title on the next album.
I wonder how much of an overlap there is between the Mount Eerie and 100 Gex audience.
I'm assuming that you and
Probably
I
really
make up
slim.
like 80% of that overlap.
Wow. There's us and then like a third of a person.
Yeah, exactly. Us and then like some 13-year-old.
Yeah, someone who likes 100 gex and listened to the moon once.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you
Well,
fall in the center of this Venn diagram, please leave a comment and let us know.
yes. Solidarity for the
Yeah,
gex.
yeah, exactly.
All right.
Anything else you want to touch on? Mount Eerie Part 6 and 7?
No. Oh, I want to talk about the book.
Yeah.
So this, as much as this is an EP, it is also a book of photography. That I don't know if is sold anymore, but I am lucky to own a copy. And in it, he's basically, I know you can look at a lot of the pictures on his website, certainly not all of them, but in it, he's basically kind of working within a, lomography style, and it's cool stuff. It really is. I don't know. I'm not always the biggest fan of lomography type work, but he's done some interesting stuff here. It contains the second cover of No Flashlight. Actually, it contains all of the covers of No Flashlight
Oh, okay.
inside of it. And there's some really cool pictures. There's some pictures from his trip in Norway, some self-portraits, and yeah. Oh, and for those who aren't in the know, which is probably a lot of people, lomography is like basically it's kind of intentionally working with like expired film, light leaked film, and like shitty cameras to produce a sort of dreamlike quality or nostalgic feel to the image. Um, and I'm not always a fan of this pastiche, but it can be done really well, and Phil did that, and it's always cool to see him working in different mediums. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, Phil does good photography. If you're a fan, you should check it out because more people should care about fine art photography.
Heck yeah.
All right, that's my spiel.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I would like to. I've not seen any of these photographs. I'm sure they're cool. I know that Phil is not like a quote unquote professional photographer, but he does have cool artwork associated with his music that is I think sort of relevant in a lot of ways to the music itself. It's like sort of an extra aspect of the art as a whole.
yeah. Um, oh, and you can also, if it tickles your fancy, you can buy prints of any of his photographs on PW Elverum and Son.
Yeah.
I have not. I will not. They're expensive, but uh, thought I'd throw that out there. If you need
Yeah.
some good wall art. We like to support the big man in the small
Yep.
town.
Our technically he would be like our manager or like our boss, like
Please support my boss.
yeah.
He lives in a small town in Washington, and
Yeah.
he is a single father. Please support our boss.
Um so yeah, I think you mentioned in the beginning, like guess briefly give a shout out to the NPR Tiny Desk that just came out.
Yes. Yeah.
Featuring Phil Elverum and one Julie Dworin performing select songs from Lost Wisdom Part 2.
It's a really nice performance, and
Yeah.
reminded me that Love Without Possession is like an all-timer.
Easily. Wonderful song.
Easily top 3 Phil for me.
Ooh. See,
I
there's a spicy take.
Yeah.
We like it. We like
That's
those spicy takes over here.
really fucking good. Really hits the spot, my friends.
Yeah. Excellent song. I think they played Belief, Enduring the Waves,
Yes.
and then Love Without Possession. Those are the three. Yep.
Watching
Pretty good.
watching them perform this, and I did see them live too, but watching them perform it here for some reason made Belief click with me in a way that it hadn't before.
Nice.
I don't know, I just paid so much more attention to kind of what he was saying and where he was going with it, and it's, yeah, also a very good song.
I do. Yeah, I like Belief a lot. He's wearing a very cool sweater in the video as well.
Yes,
Like those old sweaters.
I aspire to own a sweater that nice someday.
You will. You will.
It's a really unique sweater too. I have not seen one quite like that before. It looks very well made. Phil, please hook us up.
Yeah.
I'll drop you a line, please. I am begging you.
Yeah. Yeah, give me that sweater plug.
All right. Well, I think I've said my piece.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll be back next week, with something, a podcast,
Yes.
if
A
you will.
podcast of some sort, if you will.
Probably about like 7 new songs of Mount Eerie, 11 old songs of Mount Eerie, Dawn and Lost Wisdom.
Yeah,
But
that is a tentative plan.
yeah, that's the tentative plan. I have a very busy week ahead of me, and that is a lot to cover on a podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll see what happens, but we will have a podcast next week.
Yes, we'll feed you hungry children.
Feed our hungry disciples.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for listening.
Yes.
And we will. You will hear from us within the week.
Yes, this is true. All right.
Goodbye. And now, here's a reading of the moon. I drove up to the city at night where... it's really hard for me to read that and not want to just sing the song. or like, not read it with the cadence. But I'm gonna do my best. I drove up to the city at night where the hills... See, it really throws me off.
It's almost hard to say it without doing it in that cadence. I feel like
Yeah. Alright. I drove up to the city at night where the hills were filled with void, lack, houses, and you grew up there, and your gooey melted self that you hold strongly somehow ricocheted off your parents' absence, and you narrowly escaped, and felt stronger and hotly radiated revenge towards us all today, and you were... Okay, there is no punctuation. First thing I notice, I have not read this yet. And hotly radiated revenge towards us all today, and you were spending the night nervously dialing for your true friends, and strongly I got your call, and lovingly was reeled in. Ooh, a comma.
Ooh.
Interesting to use it now. I invested it all for some reason, and found myself excited to see the warming city night sky through the cars and painful glass and gas, and the beautiful location and soiled sand bore fruit before rotting and cutting down and sickly replacing for the wrong reasons. I was wholly excited to greet this waste. A period. Pointless things like trimmed trees and radio towers became towering symbols, and I noticed you in the cold, standing simply right next to me, and then we walked around until it got late, a triumphant blow to the fleeting fires that usually pull us both to bed when they go out early on. Disappearing early. You told long stories about your long upbringing, while we passed mansions and leaf-blown heaps, rot, bricks, and garages. We could probably both feel the ghost of the lighthouse of a tree they could see from mountain boats across the bay, where everyone used to climb the hill where now 3 red metal towers dominate to Congress, and figure out what's going wrong. Back before all the things in the city were so devastatingly wrong. Someone's house dumbly replaced such an important spot. The house dumb and serving so few because of its quick rise. But alas, in spite of all this spirit-breaking waste, I felt intact, sturdy even. A soaring self looking around and noticing the minor things that hung on. Importantly hung on, sorry, not impertinently. Um, Meekly insisting that the world is actually mysterious and unconquerable, even the weird beauties that we have a tainted hand in. The glowing orange nighttime cloud cover, the echoing crosswalk alarm, the din of the street, tires rotting, our weak castle being slowly demolished. These things can bring me slowness, calm power, and cutting eyes in the right moments, and I felt it then looking up at the orange lights, lighting unfortunate streets and reflecting lack up and resonating through the thick cloud coating in an orange city glow, the black behind eerily reminding us not to forget what else, and I turned my cutting eyes your way and saw pools of brown, balls of brown, just as wide as my holes of brown, bearing honestly what we held inside. For a second we were both looking brave and sharply seeing in. Okay, so this is like that's not it. There's still quite a bit left to go. But this is like kind of it's word vomit.
Yeah, I mean, it feels very much like an extension of the kind of, I guess you could say, poetry on the moon. Like, if you think about it, the moon is
Yeah.
already a kind of lyrically narrative song in a way. So this feels almost like a
Absolutely.
20-verse extended cut of that.
Yeah. And like it's all kind of written in his messy handwriting and really small, so I'm stumbling a little bit, but I'm
That's all
doing my best.
right. You're doing well.
Sorry. A man must blow his nose. Okay. Where was I? There was a period, so I was like, I will take this opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. I ended up just spending the night up there next to you in the same room where you grew up, and the sleep was so thick that when we woke up, when the sun was up miraculously again, it was a miracle to me that we were still sweetly there in your parents' house, lying in bed together, feeling strong and open, and the light came in the expensive windows to light our out of place thighs. Interesting. Like raised arms and cocked head screaming and rejoice. The feeling was deep and strong. Tides turned. I went back to feel alone there, to wipe the place clean, to see the towering symbols for what they were, to confront painful clues to a wholesome loving past, and neutralize myself in a way where maybe I could be human again. Flashback. And we went all the way up to the small town where I'm from. Ooh. And you had family there and a big wholesome idea about what I was because of the wholesome sense that this place puts off. And admittedly, it's a wholesome place. Foggy blankets hold rocky peaks, and fishing nets usually are getting untangled in the yard. We were there separately as kids when it was safe from the poor judgment that's ruining it now. The wind blows strongly and whipped us into a wintry frenzy, feeling rugged and warm about the closeness we calmly shared, and we avoided thinking of the problematic palm you set out with that would bloom and hurt later on. We went to the top of the mountain and looked off the edge at the other islands and the rolling clouds, the cascading mountains and the Eerie heights. It was high. Okay, it was high to look down from and still feel safe. We held each other's hand and sadly couldn't all the way feel each other, though the smooth wrinkles in your palm were hot and shocking enough to generate a sense of clear in me. I finally felt like I was breathing free, to be at such a height and look across the globe and hold a loving limb that gripped lovingly and firmly in the whipping wind. Was I imagining this sense that you were also there with me? Was I putting you in a role that I'd already put out and just believing what I wanted? I got a glimpse that I got a glimpse that replaced my doubts with a thick breath of clean air. The fog parted and revealed lakes and trails through the mossy woods where we spent that night outside under mountainous blankets, looking up at the swaying trees in a way that told an old story to me. The lyrical swaying of long black limbs was full of character. The character was the character was so dark and long-lasting into the night, it crept into our heads and held us under its spell. We dreamt the same dream, and ended up dreaming creepily similar every night. Our minds were obviously dreaming towards the same cloudy place. For a sweet reason, places in quotes. For a sweet reason, and I held tight to that fact. The shallow proof that we were on the right path, and looking back, this becomes a gloomy, shameful, clawing grasp. We were lonely people lying out in the yard, struggling to feel each other, sleeping soft. To feel softness so nearby is a slippery reward. We got it in our grasp and held it tight all night in a way that put our limbs asleep. So this is like, in a way, this could be, or feels like it could be some sort of, I don't know, initial thing that he wrote that he kind of pared down.
Like he just did a stream of consciousness kind of session and then maybe picked out the most relevant content or whatever would fit best into like the sort of song format.
And for context, this is an earlier version of The Moon. It is not the version that ends up on the album. It's actually the acoustic version and then like the kind of collage that ends up on Song Islands.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Where was I? There was the distant repetition of the lighthouse tone all night, the whooshy clacking of the trees, chilly blow, and more cloudy glowing lights from the refinery, green glow in the sky. Interesting. There's a comma that shouldn't be there.
Uh-oh.
The night was long and sort of weird how chilly and sturdy it felt the whole thick night through, and it was sort of weird how chilly and sturdy it felt the whole thick night through. Another miraculous awake dawning. Roosters and tramping baby goats bleating and discussing the common night. For animals in the barn who wake up cold every day, there's no refreshing feeling like ours to get hot slowly while the creeping sun composted our mountains of padding. Waking up in the yard felt the same with soupy muscles as the day before, being tilted by wind and clinging to rocks in a barren place. Echo of clinging to rocks and wind there. The warm, slow, chesty feeling was the same. The calm assurance of having a friend who can see with you, you know. Sorry. The warm, slow, chesty feeling was the same. The calm assurance of having a friend who can see with you, you know. But the cutting truth was made clear. I have an island home. My place is to be ferried, not bridged. And the dramatic sadness poured out, and I went back and felt alone in those places. I went up to the mountain again alone, tried to not hold any false power in my old feelings up there. I let myself feel awful and blow away. Sorry, were you going to say something?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I am only halfway right now. Should I keep going?
Sure, yeah.
I guess, yeah, we've started it. We should, it feels long, but we've started it and,
can commit.
Yeah, must commit. We went to the beach together, a detailed trip with a larger, vague, warm feeling. It was cold and we only had the wool blanket from my bed. We used it as a shield from the sandy wind and the blinding light coming off the loud water. A tiny tent, a hidden berth, two bodies on the earth eating sand and lovingly rubbing it in all around and through our hair. Taste, temperature, a fresh perspective of what seems really important. A triumph statue in the face of a lonely world. We had a lofty feeling on the beach, like pioneers, while I pioneered the territory in your chest, the bloody frontier. My homestead was stocked with flesh and whispered stories, a bountiful stockpile for today's long winter. My cured supplies have turned bitter. The warmth I hoped to reminisce about was a freezing illusion. There's no storing away what's so true and fleeting. The constant palette of lack is reliable. It's slow and visible through is reliable. It is slow and visible through a flimsy film of pride and poorly built false secure senses. It was intense. We were new. You were trying to stake your claim on me, you were trying to stake your claim on me then, and I swung my gate wide for your parade. Gifts, jugglers, banners, fruitful hope, and warm teamwork. You moved in upstairs from my room. You lowered down notes. You walked softly on my ceiling. Your bath leaked on me. There on the beach in the wind, we were two teams joining forces, understandingly and streamlining to fierce wind. The roaring waves, the pounding surf, the foggy something. Something is in parentheses there. That caught my eye, stayed there and grew. My view got wide and I was a larger person, magnificently widened, wide-eyed under covers in a threatening place and feeling warmth from another breath. I got sharply cut in half and had to go back to the sea and wished I hadn't opened my gates. I had to, in a way. Renounce what I knew was true, and the large ways that I'd grown, I had to claim to not be. It was stupid. I went to the sandy expanse and felt sweeping regret. My woolly shield at home and standing out there threatening to be blown down to inflict a slobbering blow.
Oh man.
To inflict a sobering blow on my cold head. I stared to see in a violent way, a red gaze to the blue washy spray. I went back there to remember my small place and your insignificant role. Continuously now, every single night since I've been alive, there's been a white light from above, a sort of eerie bluish glow on the empty streets where we live. In the summer's end, we climbed out the window downtown and out onto the roof with more blankets again, and stared knowingly at it for what it was, a floating ball of rock, lit up by another ball. An invisible ball of fire reflecting light and weird blue moony thoughts ricocheted around our planet onto us on the roof, staring silently up and feeling invincible, dangerous and high. I had the exciting feeling of heft in my chest, like I was carrying a baby. Like I was carrying a baby. My baby looked exactly like me, and looked me in the eye, sharply knowing I was about to lose it. But from up on the roof, I looked out across the globe again with you. I felt the lava behind us coursing deeply. I think that does not look like a letter, but I think that word says deeply. And the other side, I felt the space above us and the other side of the moon behind that. And off to the side I felt tiny lights off the glass, My sensitivity ran off. I could feel electricity through a wire from a mile away, and I even felt the churning water turning turbines behind that, and the fish upstream and smooth rocks beneath being slowly ground down by the polishing flow, and the bubbling mountains, glacially spilling stone, the smooth escape and reformation of pilgrims from one rotting body to another. Tiny growth to rot soon expand. I felt a part of this all, and it was content to have you feel it too. To have the blood in your eye and your to have the blood in your hand, holding mine, be equally wet and warm. And I looked to my right and saw you riveted to the sky, riveted in an all-encompassing way to feel it all, including me and my mountainous pride to your left. We were a pair of moist bodies again in the creepy bluish light, to be able to feel in an instant the size of yourself, and the distance to that elusive glowing ball, and the long path it all takes to become what you're a part of now. It's like being transcendently spelled wrong. It's like being transcendently dead for a second, to be able to breathe in and out and have that be a rapturous play. We were silently amazed, and nobody said any words. We felt safe, and we discovered that our skin is soft. We both are glowing in smooth flesh like blue moony light, and we found that out. You had your arm on my waist. I had my palm on your neck. Air flowed in and slid out. Cars drove by, the roaring sound of the planet's spin. We were separately mighty in tiny universes, and our main strength was being able to psychically discuss certain death, the only thing left. We were mighty. After getting terribly hurt by you, I had to go back and cancel everything out that had any value, a helpful and depressing way of dealing with such a loss. I went out into the street by my house to try and look up at the moon blindly, to all of a sudden think it's a white hole, or some kind of stupid prop, to get in the car and drive pointlessly around, to try and forget that I made the attempt to hang my mightiness up, and to be painlessly dumb, peacefully numb. It seemed better to not have to know what's really going on for some reason. I sacrificed my calm, powerful way for a stupid attempt to avoid. I stood out in the street looking up, and my eyes got wide. There's no escape, and the end's not something I'd be able to wait out. I have to lucidly keep going along and feel the cut grow and get infected before I even maybe won't heal. I looked up for a long time, and my mouth got wide and chilly air filled my chest. I saw the slow rustling in the bushes across the tracks, an orange light up the street, and the tunneling feeling below them. My neck bent slow as I surveyed my still dark home. I saw my feet firmly planted on the cement. They were tinted in blue, and I looked past them through the crusty layers onto the burning coil. I saw the smoke from my chimney and felt my stomach roar, and in the blue light I held on to my lack.